Stories for Lost Musicians presents The Rise and Fall of Terence Gunn. Chapter 1. In Production. Here is a challenge. Try going 1 week without checking your socials after creating something. No feedback, no validation. That empty quiet you would feel? That is exactly what haunted Terence Gunn after every packed festival. The highs were chemical, almost measurable. The brain's reward system lighting up like the build before a drop. Dopamine released with every cheer, every comment, every like. For Terence, that response became more than excitement. It was need. Each surge of sound fed a hunger that silence could not fill. Somewhere between the roar of the crowd and the quiet of his own thoughts, he began to hear something else calling. Chapter 2. The First Spark. What followed was a shift so subtle, it almost went unnoticed at first, a quiet pull toward what would become the first spark, the beginning of leaving the noise for a new sound. Each morning still began the same way. Terence showed up to the office on time, blending into the soft gray rhythm of screens and small talk. The work was safe, predictable, and entirely quiet in its own kind of way. Yet behind that calm, something kept humming along, slightly offbeat. The sense that he was trading hours of his life for a song that was not his. By the time dusk settled, he would draw the blinds, open his laptop, and disappear into sound. He never called those late nights a dream. They were experiments, exercises in focus, driven by a need to build shapes out of rhythm and air. He layered drum hits and stretched notes until each beat felt like a muscle flexing. The walls of his apartment seemed to carry the residue of every attempt, vibrating faintly from the repetition. His friends laughed when he called it work. They said he was lucky to have a steady job, that music was better left as a release, not a plan. But while their advice made sense, it could not compete with the low, steady pulse in his headphones. In those hours, each loop he built felt both new and strangely familiar. Science shows that humans respond to rhythm before birth, their heart rate sinking to sounds even in the womb. That early connection to vibration and tone might explain why some people, like Terence, never quite lose that pull. He was not chasing fame or recognition. He was reconnecting with something deeply encoded. Every rhythm he sculpted seemed to trace back to a place beyond language, a pattern that guided rather than obeyed him. During the day, he kept his creative life guarded, a quiet code he did not share with coworkers. Still, people noticed a shift in his energy, not joy exactly, something more like momentum. His process mirrored the repetition-based methods used in early music training. Listen, adjust, repeat, until it sinks in so deep it becomes instinct. Each night he built his own version of that discipline. Hours of trial and error taught him to notice the smallest details. A clipped frequency, a lag in tempo, a resonance slightly off register. Those imperfections were not flaws anymore. They were the fingerprints of something real. Shortcuts did not exist in his world, but that was what made it satisfying. When locked into a loop, time blurred. The fridge's hum and the faint traffic outside folded into his track as if the world were accidentally collaborating. The act of making sound became its own type of meditation, focused, deliberate, and strangely freeing. He was working towards something he could not quite describe. Biodyne instinct, more than intention. Then came the moment of unplanned exposure. One night, tired but curious, he uploaded a remix to a small online forum, thinking it might reach a handful of ears. He sent the link to a friend and forgot about it. Days later, the track resurfaced on a niche music blog he would followed for years. The comments were simple, heart emojis, short bursts of praise, but to him, they felt monumental. Strangers were hearing what he heard. For the first time, the sound had left his room and found resonance elsewhere. That small wave of validation shifted everything. It was not fame, just proof that the sound carried meaning beyond him. Within days, he made a choice he would skirt it around for years. He typed out a resignation letter, printed it quietly, and left it on his manager's desk, without fuss. No speeches, no drama, only that private decision. 1 year to see how far the sound could go. Packing up his things took only minutes. The room around him fell back into its steady hum, and as he walked out, it felt less like an exit and more like a beginning. Outside, the evening air felt thin and electric, full of the uncertainty he had been trying to ignore. The quiet that followed was no longer emptiness. It was possibility, the space between routine and revelation. And somewhere in that silence, a new question began taking shape, one that would follow him deep into the next track. What if a single moment of sound could hit like a rush of pure adrenaline?
Clock hands blurring neon light. Gray rooms fade into the night. A hum beneath the surface grows. No one hears, but I suppose I can feel the pulse begin. Under my skin, under my skin. The world falls out, the beat pulls in. This is where I start again. Files and faces fade away. I trade my hours for a wave. A signal cuts across the air. I don't know who, but someone's there. I can feel the pulse begin. Under my skin, under my skin. The world falls out, the beat pulls in. This is where I start again. Files and faces fade away. I trade my hours for a wave. A signal cuts across the air. I don't know who, but someone's there. I can feel the pulse begin. Under my skin, under my skin. The world falls out, the beat pulls in. This is where I start again.
Chapter 3. The Drop, Dopamine, and Discovery. Terence's nights grew longer, the room lit only by the screen's glow, as he worked on what he called the drop. The project had no lyrics, no grand message, just a slow burn that climbed toward something he could almost feel under his skin. Each build tightened like a breath held too long, and each layer he adjusted felt closer to unlocking a kind of chemical clarity. When the sound finally landed, clean and heavy, it struck through him with a rush so sharp it left him dizzy. He did not need to test it. He could feel the payoff. For days, that rush lingered. It was not joy or relief exactly, more like the quiet after a deep exhale. But curiosity got the better of him, and one night he uploaded the track online with a simple caption, "New idea." He did not advertise or tag anyone. Still, within hours, notifications began flashing. A few hundred plays turned into thousands. By morning, clips of strangers, dancing, driving, or working out with his beat pulsing underneath, filled his feed. The numbers jumped faster than he could count. Each alert made something in his chest tighten and release. a rhythm that started to sync with the glow of his phone. Physiologically, that pulse had a name. Scientists describe how the brain's reward system responds to patterns of tension and release, the same mechanism behind an EDM drop or a string of social notifications. When the buildup in a song teases a listener and then bursts open, dopamine floods the system. It is the same neurochemical that fires when we taste something sweet, complete a goal, or receive praise. Terence was not just hearing his music succeed, he was feeling its biology. Each repost, like, and tag became a feedback loop, replicating the very surge his track was designed to trigger. The sound and its reception had fused into the same reward.
Numbers rise, I chase the glow. Another hit, another show. Every click, another spark, bright enough to hide the dark. This is the drop, I lose control. Heart beats faster than my soul. It hits, it fades, I want it more. Feed me silence, feed me more. Feed me silence, feed me noise. Reflections dance across the screen. I see their faces never seen. I'm the signal they replay. Still I fade with every day. Bodies move and screens collide. We're alone but synchronized. Dopamine in stereo. Let it come, then let it go. This is the drop, I lose control. Heart beats faster than my soul. It hits, it fades, I want it more. Feed me silence, feed me noise. This is the drop, I lose control. Heart beats faster than my soul. It hits, it fades, I want it more. Feed me silence, feed me noise.
As the track spread, users attached their own meanings. Comments rolled in. This beat hits different. Cannot stop replaying that drop. The phrase followed the piece everywhere. The drop, it no longer belonged to him. It was a shared heartbeat bouncing through millions of tiny screens. The dopamine wave did not discriminate. Whether it came from a real audience in a club or from digital applause online, the effect was nearly identical. Both carried the illusion of connection, the fleeting proof that somebody, somewhere, felt what he felt. But the algorithm cared only for momentum. The more people streamed, the more the platform pushed it forward, and soon the track appeared on curated playlists, party mixes, and workout charts. Yet, as the play counts soared, the financial return remained negligible. Even with tens of thousands of streams, the royalties barely covered a week's rent. It dawned on him that the same system that carried his sound across continents could also flatten it into data, each stream worth fractions of a cent. The numbers were thrilling and hollow all at once. Terence tried to celebrate. A small club invited him to perform. When he played the track live, the anticipation in the crowd mirrored the energy of his own looping drop. The build-up stretched into milliseconds of silence before crashing down. The crowd erupted, phones shot upward, and for a heartbeat he felt suspended in a pure chemical blur, sound, movement, light, noise, all folding in on itself. Yet, even amid the cheers, there was a strange dissonance. His body reacted like the crowd's did, surging, electric, but somewhere inside, something stayed still. It was recognition without presence, sound without its source. Back home, that feeling lingered like static. His inbox filled with collaborations and playlist requests. The kind of attention he had once thought would change everything. Still, the room felt unchanged. The celebration continued online. The silence remained offline. He scrolled through videos of his song looping endlessly, under strangers' lives, each one giving him that tiny burst of validation. The rush was still there, but it was smaller now, fading faster each time. The next few nights blurred together. Sleep came in thin intervals between refreshes of his feed. Every new comment felt lighter than the last, like reverb that stretched but never faded cleanly. He realized the music had become only part of the equation. The rest was the response, the digital echo feeding back into him, shaping what he would make next. It was not just sound anymore, it was stimulus. Somewhere in that repetition, the line between art and attention began to blur. The track no longer defined him. Yet he could not stop measuring himself against its momentum. The same dopamine loop that made his music infectious had begun rewriting his routine. He told himself it was progress, that viral success was proof he was finally seen. But beneath that bright surface, he could feel another shift, one that was not about sound at all. It was about being watched, and how quickly the watching could consume the making. Chapter 4. The Roar. Fame, Feeds, and the Illusion of Connection. What happens when a dream becomes a daily broadcast? For Terence, this was the new rhythm of the roar, a life lived through feeds, notifications, and screens. He would once fought to be heard, now silence never came. The tour began modestly, a patchwork of festivals and short flights stitched together by exhaustion. Each gig ended the same way: photos, hugs, selfies, and stories tagged, before he could even pack his gear. At first, it all felt like proof that the work was paying off. But soon, between airport terminals and dark hotel rooms, his reflection on the phone screen became his most familiar audience. He learned quickly that the applause did not stop online. Every night, he posted clips, crowd shots, backstage laughs, a flash of neon, all trimmed and captioned before dawn. The engagement was instant, almost predictive. Fans flooded his comments, brands followed, and promoters reached out. It was everything he once hoped for, yet the feeling barely lasted. Between gigs, his hands could not stay still. They scrolled, replied, refreshed. If numbers plateaued, worry filled the space where the beat used to. Over time, music became a byproduct of promotion. Clips outperformed full songs, and he began chasing seconds instead of sound. Research shows that platforms reward consistency, not creativity, and artists like Terence adapt to survive. Every day lost to quiet meant slipping further down the feed. Algorithms did not understand burnout. They only favored momentum. Each press of upload offered another hit of engagement, but another ounce of fatigue. Touring should have given him distance from the screen, but the economics made it impossible to slow down. Flights grew costlier, venues charged higher cuts on merchandise, and travel paperwork drained his budget before he even took the stage. Even well-known musicians were canceling tours, unable to cover basic costs. Festival organizers offered exposure instead of fair pay, and exposure did not pay for food or rest. Terence played anywhere he could, sometimes for free, because staying visible mattered more than staying solvent. Streaming was not much help either. His viral tracks had crossed 1 million plays, but the payout would not cover a single month's rent. The irony stung. One physical cassette sale might count more in chart metrics than thousands of digital streams. Friends joked about it, calling streaming a treadmill that does not stop. The joke was not far off. Each track uploaded brought attention, yes, but not stability. The music spread endlessly, while the earnings barely registered. To bridge the gaps, Terence leaned on sponsorships. A headphone company reached out, offering to feature his track in an ad. The deal was simple, quick, and lucrative enough to cover his next leg of shows. He agreed. But when the post went live, he stared at the caption and barely recognized his own voice. It was engineered to sound enthusiastic, model approved. The likes poured in, the disconnect deepened. Fans cheered the collaboration, and he thanked them, even as he muted his own notifications for a while just to breathe. As the weeks passed, he noticed how his content shifted. The early videos, unfiltered, spontaneous, were replaced by polished edits built for maximum replay. Authenticity had transformed into strategy. Even exhaustion became part of the performance. He watched other artists cycle through the same dance, posting gratitude one week, disappearing the next. Still, he maintained his pace. The numbers demanded it. His value, at least online, was defined by response. Performing live no longer felt separate from being online. Each audience held their phones aloft, capturing the same angle, the same drop, the same roar. He played the part, smiling, pointing, hyping the crowd, but beneath the energy was a hollow rhythm, steady and mechanical. After each show, he would retreat backstage, the sound of the crowd replaying in his head like a loop that would not fade. On the surface, everything looked perfect. His following grew, offers arrived faster than he could accept them, and yet, each night ended the same way. The room went quiet, the lights dimmed, and he sat scrolling through his own highlights, waiting for satisfaction that never came. Connection had blurred into performance, applause into static. The next festival was the biggest yet, tens of thousands of people, an open sky, a wall of sound waiting for the cue. Standing there before the lights rose, Terence could not tell if the hum in his chest was excitement or fatigue. The crowd's roar swelled like an ocean beneath him, but something in the middle of it stayed still, waiting. Chapter 5. The Silence. When noise becomes isolation. The sound that once lifted him now follows him everywhere. Even after the music stops, echoes linger in his head, like a memory that refuses to fade. This is the silence everyone imagines fame cannot hold, the quiet that arrives when noise becomes isolation. The festival lights are still burning outside when he steps back into the dressing room. His team is laughing, uploading clips, tagging sponsors, replaying highlights before the setlist has even cooled. Terence sits apart, nodding where he should, smiling when someone turns a camera his way. Inside, everything feels slow and flat, as if his senses cannot catch up. The body is still humming from the rush, but the feeling has gone dull. The crowd's energy has not faded, it is his own that has gone missing. During the last few songs, faint ringing began in his ears. It blended with the bass until he could not tell them apart, an afterimage of sound, looping where silence should be. By the time he finishes his encore, the noise feels heavier than the air itself. Researchers say dopamine burns bright at a peak, but repeated overstimulation can leave the brain running on empty. The craving for reward remains, while the pleasure falters. Terence does not know that language, but he understands the sensation, the emptiness after euphoria. Backstage, messages line up on his phone, like falling dominoes. The metrics are staggering, proof that his show and live stream hit record numbers. His manager reads them aloud, already planning what to post next. Terence hears nothing. He is watching the screen light up, but cannot bring himself to touch it. Once, these numbers meant victory. Now they flicker more like background static. It is not burnout he feels, it is depletion, like the sound itself has stripped something essential from him. At the hotel, replay footage from the stage fills the lobby TVs. His most streamed track plays through the speakers, every note now tangled with fatigue. The song that once sounded like movement now drags, pulling him through memories of airports, missed birthdays, and sleepless edits. Research shows how sound and memory fuse together, the hippocampus storing emotions inside melodies. For Terence, the melodies no longer carry joy, they carry weight. The connection that once gave his art meaning has rewired itself into pressure. Sleep does not come. Some nights his mind replays roaring crowds. Other nights he hears the sudden drop into nothing after applause. Whether real or imagined, it leaves him restless. The quiet in his room feels unnatural, yet he craves it. He starts wearing noise-canceling headphones with no music playing, letting the hush wrap around him. The ringing in his ears softens, but only when he stays still. He avoids messages, ignores mentions, tells himself it is temporary. People assume he is busy working. In truth, he is letting the stillness swallow him. One night, scrolling through his library, he plays Lorne's Anvil. Its dark, distorted pulse fills the space with weight. The lyric, "There is no one here," lands sharply, like recognition. The track sounds stripped of life, but strangely honest, as if someone finally named what he has been feeling. The music does not comfort him. It mirrors him, leaving just enough space to see what is missing. Hours later, when he stops the track, the silence that replaces it feels like relief. In the weeks leading up to this moment, every sound had been layered. Crowds, screens, algorithms, building toward a noise too thick to breathe through. Now, in the stillness, he notices what has been buried. He is not addicted to performance itself. He has been chasing the moment that comes after, the reaction, the flood of attention, the illusion of being seen. The rush was never connection. It was confirmation. He sits in the quiet long after the lights dim, not planning his next set or next post. For the first time, he allows himself to simply hear the silence without trying to fill it. It is strange, unsettling, but real. Beneath the hum of the city outside and the faint buzz of electronics, there is a stillness that feels almost restorative. Something in him begins to rest, though he cannot yet name why. For now, he does not reach for his phone or his synths. He just stays where he is, breathing slow, letting quiet take shape again. Something is ending, but something else is beginning. A pause before the next sound, waiting to find its rhythm. Chapter 6. The Price and the Pause. When Terence finally steps back from the noise, what remains is not absence, but something that feels cautiously whole. The price and the pause begins here, with a deliberate decision to stop chasing the momentum that once defined him. A week after that last show, he cancels the rest of his tour with a short post that reads, "Taking time off." Comments pour in immediately. Some speculate rehab, others burnout. A few frame it as an artistic retreat. He does not answer any of them. Instead, he deletes the app, lets the headlines circulate without him, and waits to see what happens when the silence is no longer forced. The quiet that follows is not comfortable, but it is real. Offstage, his world condenses to something smaller and breathable. Days no longer begin with the pressure of a screen. Breakfast takes as long as it takes. Outside, traffic, birds, and the tinny rhythm of a neighbor's playlist create a background score that belongs to no one and everyone at once. Inside, the studio setup has been pared down. One keyboard, a battered tape recorder, and headphones held together by tape. The other equipment stays locked away, out of reach, and out of sight. At first, it feels like withdrawal, hands idle, mind twitching toward a phone that is not there. But over time, he starts building again in minor gestures, small loops, gentle chords, steady pulses that help his breathing find pace. The rhythm of creation returns without expectation. The hush of his apartment, the scrape of a chair, or the soft click of a radiator becomes part of the sound field. The act of listening feels new again. He records onto tape, rewinds, listens, and leaves the imperfections intact. Without metrics to measure the value of a track, he pays attention to how it feels instead of how it might perform. This is the pause in motion, the first moment in years where the process exists for its own sake. Outside, speculation about him has become another story cycle. Articles debate whether burnout is now part of the job for touring artists, pointing to how even moderately successful musicians are canceling tours because of soaring travel costs and low returns. One headline echoes a quote that sticks with him: "It is pretty messed up for musicians out there." He does not disagree. The numbers never work. The flights, the equipment fees, the cuts taken by venues. Streaming royalties covered bills on paper but not in practice. Success, he realizes, is not a cure for instability. It often hides it. For the first time in years, he is not tied to release schedules or tour dates. Conversations with other musicians confirm he is not alone. Many are redirecting their focus towards smaller, more sustainable ways of working, turning to analog gear, layering tracks by hand, and crafting music meant to endure rather than trend. He starts reading about broader changes in the industry, organizations calling for better compensation, mental health support, and fairer models for independent artists. The Featured Artist Coalition, in particular, catches his attention. Its insistence that success should include sustainability, that creation should not come at the expense of well-being. He thinks about how much time has been lost to chasing the algorithm, and how fragile that chase really was. Now what matters feels simpler: the ability to keep making something without collapsing under the weight of exposure. One day, light filters across his desk as he records something new. There is no plan to release it. He does not name it either. For the first time in months, his body relaxes. Evenings are unhurried now. He walks when the city empties, hearing the low hum of traffic and wind, not as background noise, but as texture. The world no longer feels performative. It just exists. The pull toward validation quiets, replaced by curiosity for what creation feels like without an audience. Each night ends not in applause or alerts, but in enough quiet to think. It is here, in this slower rhythm, that he begins to notice something subtle, the sense that listening itself has become the new form of making. The break is not an ending. It is the cost of understanding what remains when everything else fades. And as the quiet settles deeper, it starts to sound less like loss and more like the start of hearing again.
No lights, no crowd, no call to play, just air between the notes today. I breathe, I wait, I let it stay. The noise has finally slipped away. In the pause, I hear what's real, not the rush, not the deal, just the hum, the world reveal. In the pause, I start to heal. The tape spins slow, the signal fades. I keep the flaws the silence made. No measure left, no charts to climb, just steady hands and borrowed time. Maybe peace is just decay, letting beauty drift away. Maybe sound was never lost, it just learned to stop. In the pause, I hear what's real, not the rush, not the deal, just the hum the world reveals. In the pause, I start to heal.
Chapter 7. Conclusion. The lesson that follows is simple but clear. The sound that once drove Terence nearly to collapse became the same force that showed him how to listen for real. He learned that creative life cannot survive on reaction alone. It grows in the quiet moments where honesty and process have space to breathe. What he found was not glory but steadiness, a kind of balance that allows the work to stand on its own. Maybe that is a question worth asking yourself. Are you creating to be seen or to be whole? In a world crowded with noise, meaning often begins where the echo ends.